The late 19th century in Alaska was a harsh master, and few knew its bite better than Aput, a young Inuit trapper of the Inuit tribe. He was a creature of the tundra, his spirit as vast and unyielding as the frozen landscape he called home. He moved with a quiet, practiced grace, his fur-lined parka a seamless extension of his form, his gaze sharp and intelligent. His world was a tapestry woven from the threads of tradition, the rhythmic song of the wind across the ice, the delicate art of the snare, the silent communion with the polar bears and caribou he respected as much as he hunted. Life was a matter of survival, a constant dance with the elements, and there was no room for frills or the foolishness of the outside world. Yet a foolishness arrived one bitter afternoon, wrapped in wool and defiance. He found her huddled near his last successful trapline, a figure stark against the endless white. Her name was Eleanor Vance, and she was an Easterner, a journalist from Boston, whose bright eyes and defiant chin suggested a life of comfort and privilege. She was a woman who spoke of progress and modernity, armed with a notepad and an unshakable belief that she could capture the essence of this wild land in ink. Aput found the notion absurd. How could a woman who smelled of lilac and city air understand the raw, untamed heart of the North? Eleanor had come to Alaska seeking a story, a grand adventure to launch her career and prove herself to a world that saw her as little more than a society girl with a fancy education. She had paid a grizzled, taciturn guide to bring her to the remote reaches of the territory, hoping to find a story that was unspoiled. What she found was a blizzard and an unforgiving wilderness. Her guide, a man named Silas, had abandoned her after their sled dogs fell ill, leaving her with a meager supply of food and the cold comfort of his promise to return. He never did. When Aput discovered her, she was on the verge of collapse. Her lips a faint blue, her fingers numb. Her city boots were a poor defense against the deep snow, and the thin wool of her coat was no match for the wind's icy talons. Aput, despite his deep-seated distrust of outsiders, could not leave her to die. He carried her back to his igloo, a sanctuary carved from the snow, where the scent of seal oil and dried fish replaced the perfume of her old life. In the warmth of his home, Aput watched her, a study in contrasts. He saw the fire in her spirit, the determination that had brought her to this place, and he also saw the naivety, the complete lack of understanding of the forces she was up against. She, in turn, saw a man who moved with the grace of a predator and the soul of a poet. His face, etched by the wind and sun, held a quiet strength she had never encountered. He wasn't like the men she knew in Boston who measured their worth in dollars and societal standing. Aput's wealth was in the knowledge of the land, in the skill of his hands, in the deep-rooted pride of his people. "My name is Eleanor," she whispered, her voice rough from the cold. "Aput," he replied, his voice a low, resonant rumble. He offered her a bowl of stew, and she ate it gratefully, the unfamiliar taste of caribou and wild herbs warming her from the inside out. Over the next few days, as the storm raged outside, a tentative truce formed between them. She tried to interview him, to fill her notepad with stories of his life. He mostly ignored her, his replies monosyllabic, his focus on the practical matters of survival. Yet a bridge began to form, built not of words, but of shared silence and the small acts of kindness he offered. He showed her how to properly thaw her boots, how to mend a small tear in her coat, and how to find warmth in the cold. As the days turned into a week, Eleanor began to see a different side of Aput. He taught her to listen to the ice, to read the patterns of the snow, and to understand the silent language of the land. He wasn't just a trapper, he was a guardian of a dying way of life. She watched him carve a small ivory trinket, his hands moving with a practiced, fluid artistry. The air of suspicion he had held since their first meeting began to soften, replaced by a grudging respect. "You don't belong here," he said one evening, his eyes fixed on the flickering flame of the oil lamp. "Your world. It's too fast, too loud. It takes, and it never gives back." Eleanor bristled. "And your world? It's too slow, too harsh. Why can't we find a middle ground?" Aput didn't answer. He simply looked at her, his dark eyes holding a world of unspoken truths. The unspoken question lingered in the air. Could they? The cold outside was no match for the fire that was beginning to spark between them, a warmth that defied logic and the vast cultural chasm that separated them. Aput knew he was drawn to her spirit, to the unshakable will in her eyes. It was a recklessness he found both bewildering and captivating. Don't miss the next chapter of this epic story. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on what happens next. The thaw came as a slow, agonizing surrender, the snow yielding to a sun that was both a blessing and a reminder of time passing. With the melting ice, the need for Eleanor to return to her world became a pressing reality. Silas, her guide, had been gone for weeks, and the hope of his return was a cold, dying ember. Aput knew he would have to take her to the nearest trading post, a journey of several days by dog sled. The thought of her leaving was a knot in his chest he refused to acknowledge. Their journey was a study in growing intimacy. They spoke more, their conversations a bridge between two wildly different worlds. Eleanor spoke of Boston's cobblestone streets, the clamor of the city, and the grand, ornate opera houses. Aput described the intricate patterns of the aurora borealis, the silent, majestic movements of the migrating caribou, and the deep, spiritual connection his people had to the land. He taught her how to navigate the treacherous ice floes, to read the signs of a coming storm, and to listen to the whispers of the wind. Their shared experiences began to blur the lines between them. A fleeting touch as he steadied her on the sled, a shared laugh over a clumsy mistake she made, a shared look of wonder at the vast, silent beauty of the mountains. He saw her as more than an outsider. He saw a woman of immense courage and a surprising vulnerability. She saw him not as a primitive trapper, but as a man of profound wisdom and a gentle soul. The physical attraction that had been a low hum now grew into an undeniable, palpable presence between them. One night, under a sky ablaze with 1,000,000 stars, they made camp. The fire cast long, dancing shadows, and the cold was kept at bay by their shared body heat in the small tent. Eleanor confessed her fears and her ambition, the pressure she felt to prove herself. "My life," she said, her voice small and vulnerable, "is a constant race. To be better, to do more." Aput listened patiently, his hand resting on the fur blanket beside her. "We do not race here," he said softly. "We endure. We become one with the land, not against it." He gently took her hand, his calloused fingers a stark contrast to her soft, smooth skin. "Your world, it is like a raging river. My world is like a still, frozen lake." The next day, a storm hit, a furious whiteout that forced them to take refuge in a snow cave Aput expertly dug. They were trapped, a small pocket of humanity in the heart of a maelstrom. The air grew thick with unspoken feelings. As the wind howled outside, a different kind of storm raged within the cave. Their conversations dwindled to nothing, replaced by the silent language of proximity, of shared breath. Finally, the dam broke. Eleanor, her voice a whisper, said, "I'm afraid, Aput. Not of the storm, but of what happens when it ends." He moved closer, his hand coming to rest on her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, a feather-light touch. "What are you afraid of, Eleanor?" "That this, what we have here, isn't real. That it's just the cold, the loneliness, the magic of this place." "It is real," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "I'm too wild for your world," he whispered, his eyes searching hers. "Yet you're the only one I can't resist." And in the silent, profound intimacy of the moment, they surrendered to each other. The cold of the world outside was no match for the fire they created, a fleeting, desperate warmth that bridged the chasm between them. The storm passed, leaving a world of glittering, untouched snow. But the peace they found was fleeting. When they reached the trading post, the harsh reality of their separate lives came crashing down. There was a boat waiting to take Eleanor south, back to her world of trains and cities and society columns. And there was Aput, a trapper whose life was here, on the tundra, with his people. The chasm that had briefly closed now seemed wider and more formidable than ever. The trading post was a stark reminder of their different worlds. The other men, with their looks of condescension toward Aput and curiosity toward Eleanor, made it clear they didn't belong together. Aput stood silently, a shield against the hostile whispers, while Eleanor felt the painful truth of her imminent return to a life of society and ambition. "I have to go, Aput," she said, her voice heavy with unshed tears. "My life is there." "And mine is here," he replied, his gaze on the distant peaks. "I cannot follow you. The air there would choke me, and the noise would deafen me to the land's whispers." He was right. A life with him, a beautiful, impossible dream, was a world away from her reality as a Boston journalist. As her departure neared, Aput gave her a gift, a small, intricately carved polar bear made of ivory. "It is for you," he said, "so you never forget where you found yourself." Eleanor's heart ached as she clutched the cool carving. "I won't forget, Aput. I can't." They stood on the dock as the boat's horn blared, a jarring sound in the quiet bay. Their final goodbye was spoken not with words, but with a look that conveyed a love born of the wilderness, a love that understood the bitter truth of their two worlds. "Goodbye, Eleanor," he said, his voice choked. "Goodbye, my wild trapper," she whispered, a single tear freezing on her cheek. She boarded the boat, her heart in turmoil, and watched him become a solitary figure against the vast, unforgiving landscape. He was a monument to a love too wild for her world, yet one she knew she could never truly resist. Eleanor returned to Boston, a celebrated figure, but she never wrote about Aput. He remained her secret, a silent, wild presence she carried with her. And in Alaska, Aput's heart was a little heavier, his spirit a little lonelier. In the quiet of the long winter, he would whisper to the wind, a confession no one but the land could hear. "I'm too wild for your world," he would say, "yet you're the only one I can't resist."